let's go into kind of the phases of the menstrual cycle and how a woman should approach that when it comes to her nutrition.
Yeah, I think this is really critical, especially for women, younger women that are listening or watching our conversation. So, number one, understanding that we have two main phases in our menstrual cycle, and I'm going to oversimplify things just to keep it kind of concise. From the day of menstruation, the day your period starts, that is, the start of this follicular phase when you're having, estrogen levels are rising over time up until ovulation. This is considered to be the follicular phase. This is a time when your body can handle a bit more hormetic stress. So, cold showers, intense exercise, maybe lower carbohydrate diets, intermittent fasting, as an example. And then after ovulation, this is when your libido will pick up, around ovulation. After ovulation, this is the time frame for progesterone. You'll get this peak in progesterone. It'll ebb and flow during the second 2 weeks of your cycle. And understanding that progesterone is designed to be a balancing to estrogen. They're designed to work together, but progesterone in particular is a hormone that is encouraging our bodies to slow down. It is encouraging us to do less intense exercise, to do a bit less fasting. This is the time, usually in particular, the 5 to 7 days preceding your menstrual cycle. This is when I say 12 hours of digestive rest. This is when women will say to me, I'm struggling to get to 13 hours of fasting, and helping them understand that a lot of this is a byproduct of progesterone and what's going on in the body. This is when sometimes people get sleep disruptions. They have more anxiety or depression, depending on what their progesterone is doing throughout that second phase of the cycle. But helping women understand this is not the time to be fasting until you get your menstrual cycle. For that last week of your cycle, you may need more rest. You may need a bit more discretionary, healthy carbohydrates. And this doesn't mean go eat a pizza. This means maybe you have half a cup sweet potato, or maybe you have some squash, or you're having a bit more berries. Understanding this is a time when yoga, tai chi, less intense exercise is really going to work to your benefit cyclically. And then when your menstrual cycle starts again, depending on how you feel, and some women don't feel great when they get their cycle or when it starts, but again, we're moving into that follicular phase. So moving into the phase where we're going to get some peaks in estrogen. That's usually when you have more energy. You can probably get away with a little less sleep. I always say estrogen is kind of our superpower when it's properly kind of balanced. And I know the concept of hormone balancing is sometimes very voodoo in the health and wellness space, but I always say it's always in the context of hormones are doing their job. So we want to make sure we're optimizing hormones. So understanding that for my cycling women still in their peak fertile years, our bodies, even if we are not choosing to have children at that time in our lives, our bodies are exquisitely attuned to stress and to cues from our environment, whether it's food restriction, whether it's intensity of exercise, whether it's sleep, etc. And this is why I use the menstrual cycle as a barometer of intensity of physical activities and other activities that we're doing. Just like blood pressure, just like pulse, I think about our menstrual cycle as important, if not more important. It's a sign of how healthy our body is. Because if you lose your menstrual cycle in response to intermittent fasting or really intense exercise or food restriction, etc., it is a sign that your body has decided it is not an opportune time to become pregnant, even if you don't want to be pregnant. So if your menstrual cycle, when you start fasting, maybe it's a little shorter, maybe it's a little longer, that is different. If you lose your menstrual cycle, and this does happen on occasion, and this is why very thin women that are very physically active, I don't encourage them to do a lot of fasting. Maybe it's 12 hours of digestive rest, but you really likely would benefit from 3 meals a day and not less. However, if you are someone that is insulin resistant, you're diabetic, you know that you have PCOS, which is a byproduct of insulin resistance and inflammation, helping women understand that they would benefit from a little bit of fasting, especially in that opportune first half of the menstrual cycle. A lot of those women that are insulin resistant also have luteal phase defects. So in many ways, they're already a little progesterone deficient. So they may have very long cycles. And this is where sometimes it can be a little bit nuanced, but helping women understand, especially younger women, there's a time to fast, there's a time not to fast. And a sign that your body has had too much hormetic stress is losing your menstrual cycle. And that is absolutely positively a sign that you need to back off, probably likely from the exercise intensity also from the fasting. And it could also be may need to liberalize up your diet a little bit.
Yeah, another great summary there. And I think also your principle of you've got to be able to sleep well at night. Don't even start something like this other than maybe a 12-hour overnight until you get your sleep dialed in. I think that's a really great prerequisite. So once you feel like you're waking up, you're refreshed, and there's ways that you can track your sleep score and things like that. That's when you're ready to start to stack some of these hormetic stressors, or at least introduce one or two of these, to kind of shock your system and create more resilience. But you got to have that good sleep first.
No,
And
I think that's so important. And just one thing that I want to dovetail into there is how many women across social media will reach out and say, I have terrible sleep, but I've been trying to fast and now my sleep is
yeah,
worse. And that's just another sign, another validation that we have to work on the sleep first. I always say sleep is foundational. This applies to men and women. If your sleep is terrible, please work on the sleep first.
mm,
The fasting can wait. You can still do 12 hours of digestive rest. There will still be benefits from it. And you don't win a medal if you fast really long and you're not sleeping well. So I think it's really important to just kind of continue to reintroduce that concept, to just say it's okay if right now you're not fasting, if in the context of understanding that there's too much stress going on in your life and your sleep quality has eroded to a point that you have to dial in on that, because you won't make good food choices if you're not sleeping well. You're not going to crave nutrient dense whole foods. You're going to crave junk. You don't crave, the joke is you're not going to crave chicken and broccoli. You're very likely going to crave cookies and ice cream and chips, because your body's really desperately looking for some way to kind of boost serotonin and, improve your energy levels, which we know those foods are not going to help that long term. They're actually going to give you a little bit of a boost in serotonin, and then ultimately it's going to dysregulate your glucose and your insulin as well.
yeah, that's good. I always say that, if you want to practice intermittent fasting, think about it like, okay, I want to do a 5K. If your goal was I want to do, a 16-8 type of fast, well, it's kind of like saying I want to do a 5K. And if you're not sleeping well at night, it's like you have an ankle injury, right? Before you're going to do a 5K, you got to heal your ankle injury. Then you got to start by walking. And then you start to obviously, jog, and you kind of gradually build up, and then you're there, right? Before you know it, you're there, but you got to take it one step at a time. You don't run the 5K when you've got a sprained ankle.
Such a good point. And I think this is also speaking to, if the bulk of our population, about 7 to 8% of Americans right now, are metabolically healthy, it means most of us are not. And so it may take time. As you mentioned, you're preparing for that 5K. It may take weeks. It may take 4 to 6 weeks to be in a position where you can successfully fast and not feel like you are winded, miserable, all those symptoms that you feel when you're out of shape and you're trying to run that 5K. You may experience some of those same pain points. And I always say this is a time to be gentle to our bodies, back things up, go back to the basics so that you can be successful in this endeavor.